Arizona Territory, 1885. Vanessa Birch stared at her reflection in the spotted mirror of her small bedroom above her father's general store in the dusty town of Copper Springs. At 22, she had long ago given up the girlish dreams that had once filled her journal. The mirror showed what she already knew, a young woman with soft curves that extended well beyond what fashion plates deemed acceptable, dressed in a practical blue calico that did little to disguise her ample figure. Her honey-blonde hair was pulled back in a simple knot, and her green eyes held a wariness that came from years of sideways glances and whispered comments. "Vanessa, the shipment from Phoenix needs checking," her father's voice called from below. "Coming, Pa?" She pinched her cheeks for color and squared her shoulders. In a frontier town like Copper Springs, being the daughter of the only general store owner meant she was needed, useful, even if she wasn't courted like the slimmer girls in town. The April sun beat down mercilessly as she descended the back stairs to the loading area. Her father, Edgar Birch, a wiry man with kind eyes and a perpetually worried expression, was already tallying items on a list. "Everything from sugar to nails and that special order of fabric for Mrs. Holloway's wedding dress," he said, nodding toward the wagon where two men were unloading crates. Vanessa took the inventory list and began checking off items when the sound of hoofbeats made her look up. A rider approached from the east, silhouetted against the morning sun. As he drew closer, the silhouette became a young man astride a magnificent chestnut stallion. He was lean but broad-shouldered, his white shirt relatively clean for someone who'd clearly been on the trail. His hat expensive by the look of it, shaded eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Morning," the stranger said, dismounting with the fluid grace of someone born to horseback. "Oliver Thornton." He extended a gloved hand to Edgar. "I believe you're expecting me. I'm here about the cattle buyer position with the Rocking W." Edgar shook the offered hand. "Edgar Birch. William mentioned he'd hired a new man from up Colorado way." The stranger Oliver turned to Vanessa, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair and startlingly blue eyes. His face was handsome in a youthful, open way, with a day's worth of light stubble on his jaw. Vanessa guessed him to be perhaps 25. "Ma'am," he said with a slight bow of his head, revealing manners that seemed out of place for a dusty cattle hand. "This is my daughter Vanessa," Edgar said. "She runs the store as much as I do these days." "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Birch." Oliver smiled, and something about the genuine warmth in it made Vanessa momentarily forget to be self-conscious. "Mr. Thornton," she acknowledged, then quickly returned her attention to the inventory list. "Pa, we're missing the seed order and the medicinals Dr. Fowler requested." As her father discussed the missing items with the freight driver, Oliver leaned against a porch post, watching Vanessa work with unconcealed interest. "You know your way around inventory," he observed. I've been doing it since I was 12. She didn't look up from her list, afraid that if she met those blue eyes again, she'd blush like a schoolgirl. "The Rocking W's a good outfit," he said. "I'll be riding out there later today once I get supplies. Any recommendations on what a newcomer might need in these parts?" Now she did look up, professional instincts taking over. "Depends on what you've brought. The nights get cold still, even in April. You'll want good leather gloves. The thorns on the mesquite will tear your hands to shreds otherwise." "Sensible advice," he said, that smile returning. "Perhaps you could show me what you'd recommend." Before she could answer, the town's self-appointed gossip, Mabel Winston, bustled up to the loading area, her eyes alight with curiosity at the sight of the handsome stranger. "Well now, who have we here?" she asked, looking Oliver up and down with naked appraisal. "Oliver Thornton, ma'am," he said politely, "just arrived to work for the Rocking W." "Oh my. William's been needing good help since that terrible business with the rustlers last fall. You must meet my niece Lillian. Such a pretty little thing, slim as a reed and just 17. Unmarried girls are scarce out here, you know." She gave a significant look at Vanessa, who felt her cheeks burn. "I'm sure Mr. Thornton has more important matters to attend to than social calls, Mrs. Winston," Vanessa said, her voice stiffer than she intended. Oliver's eyes flickered between the two women, a slight furrow in his brow. "Actually, Miss Birch was about to assist me with my supply needs." "If you'll excuse us, ma'am." Without waiting for a reply, he gestured for Vanessa to lead the way into the store. She did so, grateful for the rescue but wary of the inevitable gossip that would follow. Inside the cool dimness of the general store, Vanessa moved efficiently behind the counter. "What exactly will you need, Mr. Thornton?" "Oliver, please." He leaned casually on the counter. and I think I need whatever you suggest. I'm new to Arizona, though not to ranch work. For the next half hour, Vanessa helped him select essentials, the promised leather gloves, coffee, tobacco, though he claimed he rarely smoked, ammunition for his Winchester, writing paper, and various other necessities. You're not what I expected in a general store proprietor, Oliver said as she wrapped his purchases in brown paper. And what did you expect? She asked. Someone who doesn't notice that I'm left-handed when measuring for gloves. Someone who doesn't recommend the more expensive coffee because it'll taste better after 3 weeks in a saddlebag. His gaze was direct, appraising in a way that made her both uncomfortable and flattered. My father taught me to observe customers' needs, she replied, tying the package with string. That'll be $4.35. Oliver counted out the money, then hesitated. Miss Birch, Vanessa, I'm new in town and I hear there's a social at the church next Saturday. Would you consider? Mr. Thornton, she cut him off, her voice low and firm. I appreciate your business, but I should warn you that I'm not one for social games. I've lived in Copper Springs all my life. I know what happens when newcomers arrive full of friendly intentions before they see the lay of the land. Her fingers unconsciously smoothed the fabric of her dress over her rounded stomach, a gesture of self-consciousness she immediately regretted. His eyebrows drew together in genuine confusion. I'm not sure I understand. You will, she pushed his parcels toward him. The rocking W is 8 miles north. Follow the creek and you can't miss it. Oliver took his packages but didn't move to leave. I've offended you somehow. No, she sighed, you haven't. But trust me, Mr. Thornton, once you meet Lillian Winston and the other young ladies of Copper Springs, you'll understand why inviting the storekeeper's daughter to a social is unnecessary. A flash of something, anger, crossed his face, but he simply nodded. I appreciate your help today, Miss Birch. I suspect I'll be a regular customer. With that, he settled his hat firmly on his head and strode out, leaving Vanessa with the strange, hollow feeling that she'd just made both the right decision and a terrible mistake. For 2 weeks, Vanessa saw nothing of Oliver Thornton, though she heard plenty. Mabel Winston made sure everyone knew that the handsome new cattle buyer from the Rocking W had taken tea at her house and met her lovely niece. The bank manager's daughter, Clara Peterson, had apparently caught his eye at Sunday services. Even Alina Rodriguez, the beautiful daughter of a prosperous rancher south of town, was rumored to have danced with him at an impromptu gathering at the Rocking W. Vanessa told herself she was glad she'd headed off any awkwardness. Men like Oliver Thornton didn't court women like her, not seriously. She'd learned that lesson painfully 3 years earlier with James Harker, a traveling salesman who'd courted her sweetly until the local men had teased him about liking his women with extra padding. He'd left town the next day without so much as a goodbye. Her father noticed her distraction as they closed up the store one evening. You've been quiet lately, Nessie. Just tired, Pa, she wiped down the counter with more vigor than necessary. Heard young Thornton's making quite an impression around town, Edgar said casually. William says he's the best cattle buyer he's had in years, honest, hardworking. That's nice, Vanessa said, non-committal. He asked after you the other day. Wanted to know if you'd recovered from whatever ailed you, since you haven't been to any of the socials. Vanessa's hand stilled. Nothing ails me, Pa, I've just been busy. Edgar sighed, rubbing his gray-streaked beard. Your mother would want you to have some joy, Nessie, not just work. I have joy, she forced a smile. Now, let's finish up so you can have your chess game with Dr. Fowler. But as she climbed the stairs to her bedroom that night, Vanessa admitted to herself that joy had been in short supply lately. Perhaps it was time to accept that at 22, with no prospects and a figure that drew either pity or mockery, her future would be defined by the store and caring for her father as he aged. It wasn't a bad life, just not the one she dreamed of as a girl. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Vanessa was alone in the store, her father having left at dawn for Phoenix to deal with supply issues. The bell over the door jangled, and she looked up to see Oliver Thornton himself, looking even more handsome than she remembered in a clean blue shirt and dark vest. Miss Birch, he said, removing his hat. I hope the day finds you well. Mr. Thornton, she nodded politely, what can I help you with today? Information, actually. He approached the counter with a deliberate casualness that seemed studied. I'm looking for someone to help me understand the cattle market in this region. Your father was recommended, but I hear he's away. He is left for Phoenix this morning. Oliver nodded thoughtfully. And when will he return? 3 or 4 days, likely. I see, he looked around the store, then back at her. And who manages in his absence? She raised an eyebrow. I do, Mr. Thornton. As I have for years. Then perhaps you can help me. He withdrew a leather-bound notebook from his pocket. I'm looking at buying a herd from the Rodriguez Ranch, but I'm not certain about their asking price given the current market. For the next hour, Vanessa found herself deep in conversation with Oliver about cattle prices, shipping costs to California, and the comparative quality of different ranches' stock. She surprised herself with how much she knew. Years of listening to ranchers talk in the store had taught her more than she realized. You understand this business better than most men I've met, Oliver said finally, closing his notebook. The admiration in his voice seemed genuine. When you grow up in a place like this, you learn what matters, she replied with a small shrug. And what matters to you, Vanessa Birch? The question was quiet, direct. She was saved from answering by the arrival of customers, the Wilcox family needing supplies after a long winter. Oliver stepped back, allowing her to work, but he didn't leave. Instead, he browsed the store, occasionally exchanging pleasantries with the Wilcoxes. When they left, he approached the counter again. I notice you sell books. He nodded toward a small shelf near the back. We do, though the selection is limited. Most are ordered specially. Would you order something for me? Of course, that's part of our service. His smile widened. Excellent. I'd like a copy of Whitman's Leaves of Grass, the complete edition if possible, and, he hesitated, a copy of Pride and Prejudice. Vanessa couldn't hide her surprise. Jane Austen. That's not typical reading for a cattle buyer. Perhaps I'm not a typical cattle buyer. His eyes held hers for a moment longer than was proper. How long would it take? 6 weeks, maybe more. Books come by stage from Tucson once they arrive from back east. Worth the wait, I think. He pulled out money to pay the deposit. I should be going. The Rocking W has a herd moving north tomorrow and there's much to prepare. As he turned to leave, Vanessa found herself calling after him. Mr. Thornton, Oliver, thank you for the conversation today, about the cattle, I mean. He paused at the door, that warm smile returning. The pleasure was entirely mine, Miss Birch. Entirely mine. The next few weeks brought Oliver Thornton to the general store with surprising regularity. Each visit featured some legitimate business, supplies needed, information about local ranchers requested, letters to be posted east. But each also included conversations that stretched well beyond business, touching on books they'd read, places they'd seen. He'd been as far as Chicago. She'd never left Arizona territory, and observations about life in Copper Springs. Vanessa found herself looking forward to these visits with an anticipation that both excited and frightened her. She knew better than to read too much into his attention. Copper Springs was a small town, the general store was its heart. Of course he'd come by often. But then came the day in late May when Oliver arrived with a bundle wrapped in brown paper. The store was empty except for Vanessa, who was arranging a display of new fabrics. A gift, he said without preamble, placing the package on the counter. Mr. Thornton, I couldn't possibly. Please, his expression was earnest. It's not inappropriate. Warily she unwrapped the bundle to find a book, a beautifully bound copy of the complete works of William Shakespeare. I saw it in Tucson last week and thought of you, he explained. You mentioned your mother used to read Shakespeare to you as a child. Vanessa ran her fingers over the embossed leather cover. This is too fine a gift, Mr. Thornton. Oliver, he corrected gently. And it's not too fine for someone who appreciates it. Books shouldn't sit on shelves gathering dust. They should be in the hands of people who love them. She looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of mockery or ulterior motive, but found only sincerity. Thank you, Oliver, it's thoughtful. You're welcome, Vanessa. He seemed about to say more when the door opened and Mabel Winston entered with her niece Lillian. Mr. Thornton, Mabel exclaimed, what a pleasant surprise. Lillian was just saying this morning how she hoped to see you before the Founders' Day celebration next week. Lillian, a pretty slim girl with fashionably arranged dark curls, offered a practiced smile. Mr. Thornton. How nice. Oliver nodded politely to both women. Mrs. Winston, Miss Winston, I was just delivering a book to Miss Birch. Mabel's eyes narrowed at the leather-bound volume on the counter. How unusual. I wasn't aware our Vanessa had literary interests. Though I suppose with so few social engagements, one must find ways to pass the time. The barb was delivered with a sweet smile that did nothing to disguise its intent. Vanessa felt the familiar heat of embarrassment rise in her cheeks. To her surprise, Oliver's expression hardened. Miss Birch has excellent taste in literature. We've had several enlightening discussions on the subject. The atmosphere in the store grew tense. Vanessa, desperate to change the subject, asked, "What can I help you with today, Mrs. Winston?" "We need ribbon for Lillian's dress for the Founders' Day dance," Mabel replied, linking arms with her niece. "Something to complement her lovely figure, which all the young men admire so." "I'll show you our selection," Vanessa said, moving toward the notions display. As she helped the Winstons select ribbon, she was acutely aware of Oliver watching from near the counter. When the women finally left, with Mabel throwing significant glances between Oliver and Lillian, he approached Vanessa again. "Do you ever wonder why some people take pleasure in others' discomfort?" he asked quietly. Vanessa arranged spools of ribbon with careful precision. "Mrs. Winston means well in her way. She's proud of her niece." "At your expense." She looked up, surprised by the edge in his voice. "Mr. Thornton." "Oliver. Oliver. I've lived in Copper Springs my whole life. I know my place in it." His brow furrowed. "Your place? And what place is that exactly?" "The reliable spinster daughter, the practical storekeeper." She gestured to herself with a self-deprecating smile. "Not the belle of the ball." Something shifted in his expression, a hardening of his jaw, a darkening of his eyes. "Will you be attending the Founders' Day celebration?" The sudden change of subject caught her off guard. "I hadn't planned to. I'd like you to reconsider." She shook her head. "The store could surely close for one afternoon," he interrupted. "It's a town celebration, after all." "Oliver," she said softly, "whatever you're thinking, it's kind but unnecessary. I've seen how Lillian Winston looks at you. Half the young women in town are setting their caps for the handsome new cattle buyer. And what if I'm not interested in half the young women in town?" He leaned forward, his hands flat on the counter between them. "What if I'm only interested in one particular storekeeper with honey blonde hair, and a mind sharper than any I've encountered in Arizona territory?" Vanessa's heart hammered in her chest. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't make fun." "Not you," the words came out barely above a whisper. Oliver straightened, genuine confusion on his face. "Make fun? Vanessa, I'm trying to invite you to accompany me to the celebration, as my guest." "My only guest." She turned away, busying herself with straightening items that didn't need straightening. "No man wants to escort the fat girl to a town celebration, Mr. Thornton." "I've learned that lesson." There was a long silence behind her. When she finally turned back, Oliver was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Someone hurt you," he said simply. She shrugged, aiming for nonchalance and missing by a mile. "It was a long time ago." "Not so long that it doesn't still sting." He picked up his hat from the counter. "I'll respect your wishes, Miss Birch. But I hope you'll remember that not all men are the same." With that, he settled his hat and left, the bell jingling cheerfully behind him, mocking the heaviness in Vanessa's heart. The day of the Founders' Day celebration arrived hot and clear. Vanessa had every intention of keeping the store open as usual, but her father surprised her by announcing he'd placed a "closed for celebration" sign on the door. "You're coming with me, Nessie," he said firmly. "Your mother would haunt me if I let you hide away on a day meant for community." Unable to argue against the invocation of her mother, Vanessa reluctantly donned her best dress, a forest green with modest lace trim that her father had ordered from back east for her birthday. She arranged her hair more carefully than usual and even added a touch of her mother's old rose water to her wrists. "Not planning to go indeed," her father muttered with a knowing smile as they walked toward the town square where tables had been set up in the shade of cottonwood trees. The celebration was already in full swing when they arrived. Children raced between tables, a small band played lively tunes, and the women of Copper Springs displayed their finest culinary efforts on long trestle tables. Vanessa helped Mrs. Fowler arrange pies, grateful for something to do that kept her from scanning the crowd for a certain cattle buyer. "He's over by the lemonade," Mrs. Fowler said with a conspiratorial smile. "Oh, don't play innocent with me, child. That handsome Thornton boy hasn't taken his eyes off the entrance since he arrived." Vanessa felt heat rise in her cheeks. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Of course not, the older woman patted her hand. Just as I'm sure he didn't specially ask if you were coming today. Before Vanessa could respond to this startling information, Lillian Winston appeared at her side, looking lovely in a pale pink dress that emphasized her slender waist. Vanessa, what a surprise to see you here. Her tone suggested it was not a pleasant surprise. I didn't think you cared for social gatherings. My father insisted, Vanessa replied honestly. Lillian lowered her voice. I should warn you, as a friend of course, that Aunt Mabel has practically arranged for me to be seated with Mr. Thornton at dinner. It wouldn't do for there to be confusion. The warning was clear, as was the threat behind it. Vanessa had seen Lillian and her aunt destroy other girls' reputations with carefully placed gossip. There's no confusion, Lillian. I wish you every happiness. Lillian's smile turned genuine. Thank you, Vanessa. I knew you'd understand. Men like Oliver Thornton need a certain type of wife, someone who complements their position, someone presentable. With that parting shot, she floated away, leaving Vanessa feeling as though she'd been slapped. The excitement she'd felt at dressing up for the celebration evaporated, replaced by the familiar weight of self-consciousness. Don't you dare let that little snake chase you away. Vanessa turned to find Elena Rodriguez beside her, dark eyes flashing with indignation. Elena, Vanessa greeted her childhood friend with genuine warmth. I didn't know you were back from visiting your cousins in Tucson. Returned yesterday, Elena linked arms with her, just in time to see Lillian Winston sharpening her claws. What did she say to you? Nothing that wasn't true, Vanessa sighed. She and Oliver Thornton would make a handsome couple. Elena snorted indelicately. That man has about as much interest in Lillian Winston as my father's prize bull has in Needle Point. Come, let's get lemonade. I'm parched after the ride-in. Before Vanessa could protest, she found herself being steered toward the lemonade table and directly into the path of Oliver Thornton. He looked even more handsome than usual in a crisp white shirt, dark vest, and string tie. His face lit up when he saw her, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Miss Birch, he said, removing his hat. You decided to come after all. My father insisted, she repeated, uncomfortably aware of Elena watching the exchange with interest. Then I'll have to thank him. Oliver's eyes moved appreciatively over her green dress. You look beautiful. The compliment, delivered so straightforwardly, left her momentarily speechless. Elena cleared her throat pointedly. Mr. Thornton, I believe you were negotiating with my father about our spring calves. Oliver tore his gaze from Vanessa. Miss Rodriguez, yes indeed, your father drives a hard bargain. So I've heard, Elena's grin was mischievous. I've also heard you're quite the dancer. Perhaps you'll save me a turn around the square later. I'd be honored, he replied politely, though I'd hoped. His gaze returned to Vanessa. Before he could finish, Mabel Winston descended upon their small group, Lillian in tow. Mr. Thornton, we've been looking everywhere for you. The judging for the baking contest is about to begin, and Lillian's apple pie is sure to win. You simply must try a piece. Oliver's expression cooled noticeably. Mrs. Winston, I was just speaking with Miss Birch and Miss Rodriguez. Oh, but they won't mind, will you girls? Mabel's tone made it clear that whether they minded or not was irrelevant. Come along, Mr. Thornton. All the important families are gathering by the judge's table. With a firm grip on his arm, she practically dragged him away. He looked back over his shoulder apologetically, but allowed himself to be led through the crowd. Important families indeed, Elena muttered, as if her brother-in-law's failing sheep ranch makes them royalty. Vanessa attempted a smile. Let's get that lemonade, it's growing warmer by the minute. As the day wore on, Vanessa found herself watching Oliver from a distance. True to her word, Mabel Winston kept him firmly in Lillian's orbit, introducing him to the right people and ensuring he was seated beside her niece at dinner. Yet Vanessa noticed something curious. Despite Lillian's attentions and Mabel's machinations, Oliver's gaze frequently sought her out across the crowded square. More than once, she looked up to find him watching her, a slight furrow between his brows as though he were trying to solve a puzzle. After dinner, as the band struck up livelier tunes for dancing, Vanessa decided it was time to leave. She'd fulfilled her obligation to attend. Now she could retreat to the quiet sanctuary of her bedroom with her new Shakespeare collection. She was saying goodbye to her father, who planned to stay for the evening poker game, when a familiar voice spoke behind her. Leaving so soon? She turned to find Oliver, slightly breathless as though he'd hurried to catch her. "I think I've had enough celebration for one day," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "Without a single dance," he held out his hand. "I believe I still owe you that much at least." From the corner of her eye, Vanessa could see Mabel Winston watching them, her expression thunderous. Lillian stood beside her, whispering to Clara Peterson and several other girls, all of whom were staring openly. "I don't think that would be wise," Vanessa said quietly. "Mrs. Winston seems to have other plans for your evening." Oliver's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Winston doesn't dictate my actions." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Dance with me, Vanessa." "Please." Something in his earnest expression made refusal impossible. She placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her toward the cleared space where couples were already moving to the music. As they reached the edge of the dancing area, Lillian Winston stepped directly into their path. "Oh, Mr. Thornton, there you are. You promised me the next dance, remember?" She fluttered her eyelashes up at him. Oliver's expression didn't change. "I don't recall making such a promise, Miss Winston, and as you can see, I've already asked Miss Birch for this dance." Lillian's smile faltered. "Surely you're joking, you can't mean to dance with." "Sorry." The hesitation before the final word carried all the disdain Lillian couldn't quite put into polite language. Oliver's hand tightened around Vanessa's. "I assure you, Miss Winston, I am quite serious about dancing with Miss Birch." But Lillian glanced around at the watching crowd, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Everyone will see." "I certainly hope so," Oliver replied evenly. Then, with a small bow to the fuming young woman, he guided Vanessa past her and onto the dance floor. As they took their positions among the other couples, Vanessa could feel dozens of curious eyes on them. "You've created quite a scandal, Mr. Thornton." "Oliver," he corrected, one hand settling respectfully at her waist as the other held hers. "And I don't give a damn about scandals." The dance began, a simple waltz that Vanessa knew well enough, though she rarely had occasion to perform it. Oliver led confidently, his movements fluid and assured. "You're a good dancer," she observed, surprised by his skill. "My mother insisted all her sons learn. She said a man who can't dance properly has no business asking a lady to partner with him." His smile was warm, intimate. "You move beautifully, Vanessa." She nearly stumbled at the unexpected compliment. "I thank you, though I fear I'm out of practice." "You're perfect," he said simply. As they circled the dancing area, Vanessa gradually became aware that the initial stares and whispers were fading. In their place was something she hadn't expected, the simple pleasure of being held, however properly, by a man who looked at her as though she were the only woman in the world. When the music ended, Oliver didn't immediately release her. "Another?" he asked. Before she could answer, Mabel Winston's voice cut through the crowd. "Well, how charitable of Mr. Thornton to ensure everyone has a turn on the dance floor." "Lillian, I believe he's free now." The spell broken, Vanessa stepped back from Oliver's embrace. "Thank you for the dance, Mr. Thornton. I should really be going now." Frustration flashed across his face. "Vanessa." "Good night, Oliver." She turned and walked away, her heart pounding with emotions she couldn't name. Behind her, she heard Mabel's voice again and Lillian's higher tones, but she didn't look back. The next morning, Vanessa opened the store as usual, though her father was still sleeping off the previous night's celebration. She had just finished sweeping the front porch when Oliver's now familiar figure appeared on horseback. He dismounted quickly, securing his horse to the hitching post before approaching. He looked tired, as though he hadn't slept well. "I need to speak with you," he said without preamble. "Privately, if possible." Vanessa glanced around. The street was relatively empty this early, but privacy was a rare commodity in a town like Copper Springs. "Come inside," she said, leading him into the store and closing the door behind them. "What's so urgent?" Oliver paced a few steps, then turned to face her, determination written in every line of his body. "I've been offered a partnership." This was not what Vanessa had expected. "Congratulations." "William has been impressed with my work at the Rocking W. He's getting older, wants to step back from the day-to-day operations. He's offered me a quarter share in the ranch, with the opportunity to increase my stake over time." "That's remarkable." The Rocking W is one of the largest spreads in the territory. "It is." Oliver took a step closer. "It's also a responsibility I'd only want to take on if I had the right partner by my side." Vanessa's heart began to pound. "Oliver." "Let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. Last night, after you left, Mrs. Winston made it very clear that Lillian would make an appropriate wife for a future ranch owner. She outlined all the social and financial advantages of such a match. She was quite thorough. Vanessa's throat tightened, of course. He'd come to tell her he was courting Lillian after all. That their dance had been a momentary indulgence before practical considerations took over. I understand, she said stiffly. Lillian is a lovely girl from a good family. You don't need to explain your decision to me. Oliver frowned. My decision. Vanessa, I told her no. You what? I told her I had no interest in Lillian, however lovely she might be. I told her my interests lay elsewhere. He moved closer still, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. I told her I was already courting you. Vanessa stared at him, certain she'd misheard. You told her what? That I'm courting you. A shadow of uncertainty crossed his face. Or hoping to, at least, if you'll permit it. Oliver, this isn't funny. I'm not joking. He reached for her hand, enfolding it in both of his. Vanessa Birch, from the moment I walked into this store and saw you checking inventory with that look of fierce concentration, I've thought of little else but you. Your intelligence, your kindness, your quiet strength, these are the qualities I admire. These are the qualities I want in the woman who stands beside me. She pulled her hand away. What about Lillian's lovely figure that Mrs. Winston is so proud of? What about having a wife who's presentable in society? Oliver's expression hardened. Is that what this is about, your figure? He shook his head in disbelief. Vanessa, you're beautiful, every curve, every inch of you. But even if you weren't, even if you looked entirely different, it would be your heart and mind that drew me to you. Tears pricked at Vanessa's eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. I don't believe you. No man loves a fat girl, he finished quietly. Is that what you were going to say? Her silence was answer enough. Oliver's eyes softened. Then let me prove you wrong. Before she could respond, the store door opened. Edgar Birch entered looking rumpled but cheerful. Morning, Nessie, Mr. Thornton, early caller today. He looked between them, noting their proximity and the tension in the air. Have I interrupted something? Oliver straightened, his expression shifting to one of formal politeness. Mr. Birch, I was just discussing a matter of some importance with your daughter. Perhaps I could speak with you as well, sir, in private. Edgar raised an eyebrow. Sounds serious. Why don't we step into the office? As Oliver followed her father into the small room behind the counter, he cast one last look at Vanessa, a look filled with such tender determination that it made her breath catch. The door closed behind them, leaving Vanessa alone in the store, her heart racing and her thoughts in turmoil. The conversation between Oliver and her father lasted nearly an hour. Vanessa kept herself busy arranging displays and helping the few customers who came in, all while straining to hear anything from behind the closed door. When they finally emerged, her father looked thoughtful but not displeased. Oliver's expression was unreadable. Nessie, Edgar said, I'll mind the store for a while. Why don't you and Mr. Thornton take a walk? Seems you two have things to discuss. Vanessa looked between them uncertainly. Pawn. Go on, he urged with a small smile. Just stay within sight of the town, mind you. Wordlessly, Vanessa removed her apron and followed Oliver out onto the porch. They walked in silence until they reached a small bench beneath a cottonwood tree at the edge of the town square. What did you say to my father? She finally asked as they sat down. I asked for his permission to court you properly, Oliver replied. I told him my intentions are honorable and that, if you were willing, I hope to make you my wife by year's end. The directness of his answer stole her breath. Oliver, you barely know me. I know enough, he said simply. I know you're the smartest woman I've ever met. I know you care deeply for your father and this town. I know you love Shakespeare and have a secret fondness for penny dreadfuls that you keep hidden behind the counter. She blushed. You saw those. I notice everything about you, Vanessa. He turned to face her fully. I know you've been hurt before. Your father told me about James Harker. Her eyes widened in alarm. He had no right. He had every right to protect his daughter, Oliver interrupted gently. He wanted me to understand why you might not believe my intentions are sincere. Vanessa looked down at her hands. James courted me for nearly 2 months. He brought me flowers, wrote me poetry. Then one night at the saloon, the men started teasing him, called me. She couldn't bring herself to repeat the cruel words. The next day he was gone, left town without even saying goodbye. Oliver's jaw tightened. He was a coward. He was practical, she corrected. Men don't want wives who embarrass them, Oliver. They want women like Lillian Winston, pretty, slim, socially acceptable. Some men, perhaps. He took her hand again, and this time she didn't pull away. Not this man. Vanessa searched his face, looking for any sign of insincerity. Why me? There must be dozens of women in your past. None that matter now. Be serious, Oliver. You're handsome, educated, ambitious. You could have any woman you wanted. I'm trying to, he said with a smile that made her heart skip, but she's remarkably stubborn. Despite herself, Vanessa felt an answering smile tug at her lips. I'm practical, not stubborn. Then be practical about this. I care for you, Vanessa Birch, deeply. I want to build a life with you, children, a home, a future. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you in my arms every night. I want to grow old watching you manage our ranch with the same efficiency you bring to your father's store. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, but years of insecurity couldn't be overcome so easily. And what happens the first time someone makes a cruel remark? The first time another rancher's wife looks down her nose at your choice of bride? The first time Mabel Winston makes some cutting comment at a social gathering? Oliver's expression grew serious. Then I defend the woman I love. I make it clear that disrespect toward you is disrespect toward me, and I won't tolerate it. His voice lowered, intensified. I'm not James Harker, Vanessa. I don't run from those I care about at the first sign of difficulty. She wanted to believe him desperately, but fear still held her back. I need time, Oliver. This is overwhelming. He nodded slowly. Time you shall have, but know this. I'm not giving up. I'll court you properly with your father's blessing. I'll prove to you that my feelings are real and lasting. A commotion from down the street interrupted them. Hoofbeats and shouts preceded the arrival of a rider, his horse lathered with sweat. Raid, the man shouted as he reined in before the sheriff's office. Barrett gang hit the rocking W. Rustled half the herd headed for the railhead and shot two hands. Oliver was on his feet in an instant. William, he said, his face pale with concern for his employer, I have to go. Vanessa stood as well, fear gripping her heart. The Barrett gang is dangerous, Oliver. They've killed before. All the more reason I need to be there. He hesitated, then swiftly bent and pressed a kiss to her cheek. This isn't finished between us, Vanessa. I'll be back. Before she could respond, he was running toward the livery where his horse was stabled. Within minutes, he and several other men, including the sheriff, were galloping out of town toward the rocking W. Vanessa watched them go, her hand pressed to her cheek where his lips had touched, praying to a god she wasn't sure listened anymore that Oliver would return safely. 3 days passed with no word from the rocking W. Rumors swirled through Copper Springs. The entire herd was gone, William Rocking was dead, the Barrett gang had been caught, the Barrett gang had escaped to Mexico. No one knew what was true. Vanessa moved through her days in a fog of worry, jumping at every sound of hoofbeats outside the store. Her father watched her with concerned eyes but said little, giving her the space to process her complicated emotions. On the evening of the third day, as Vanessa was closing up the store alone, the door opened to reveal a dust-covered, exhausted Oliver Thornton. A bandage wrapped his left forearm, and a dark bruise shadowed his jaw, but he was alive and standing before her. Oliver, she rushed around the counter, propriety forgotten in her relief. What happened? Are you hurt? He caught her hands in his grip strong despite his obvious fatigue. We recovered most of the herd. The Barrett gang split up, but the sheriff caught 2 of them. The rest headed south. And William, is he? He's fine, angry as hell, but fine. Oliver's thumb traced circles on her palm. 2 of our hands were wounded, but Doc Fowler says they'll recover. We lost maybe 30 head all told. And this, she touched the bandage on his arm gently. Bullet grazed me, nothing serious. His eyes never left her face. You were worried about me. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Of course I was worried. Half the town thought you'd all been killed. A tired smile curved his lips, but you were especially worried about me. Vanessa couldn't deny it. Yes, she whispered, I was especially worried about you. His smile widened. Good, that means you care. Oliver Thornton, you are the most infuriating man I've ever met. But there was no heat in her words, only relief and something warmer she wasn't yet ready to name. I need to clean up and get some rest, he said, reluctantly releasing her hands. but I wanted you to know I was back, that I'm safe." "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded, turning to leave, then paused. "Vanessa, have dinner with me tomorrow night at the hotel restaurant. A proper dinner, with me properly cleaned up and not half dead on my feet." Her heart fluttered. "People will talk. Let them." His gaze was steady, unflinching. "I'm courting you, remember. Time to make it official." After he left, Vanessa closed the store in a daze, her mind whirling with possibilities she'd long since stopped allowing herself to imagine. The next evening, dressed in her best green dress and with her honey-blonde hair arranged in a style more elaborate than her usual practical knot, Vanessa entered the hotel restaurant on Oliver's arm. The buzz of conversation dimmed noticeably as heads turned in their direction. Oliver, freshly shaven and handsome in a dark suit, guided her to a table with the confidence of a man who knew exactly what he wanted and wasn't afraid to claim it. He held her chair, ordered wine, and engaged her in conversation that flowed as naturally as if they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. From a nearby table, Mabel Winston watched with poorly disguised disapproval, whispering furiously to her dinner companion. Other diners stole curious glances throughout the meal. "Does it bother you?" Vanessa asked quietly, nodding subtly toward the watching eyes, being the center of gossip. Oliver considered the questions seriously. "I spent my childhood as poor Oliver Thornton, whose mother died too young, my college years as that Western boy who doesn't belong at Harvard, and my early career as the upstart who thinks he knows cattle better than men twice his age. Gossip is nothing new to me." "You went to Harvard," Vanessa couldn't hide her surprise. "For 2 years before my father fell ill and I came home to help run our Colorado ranch." He smiled at her astonishment. "See, still learning about each other. What else don't I know about you, Oliver Thornton?" His expression grew thoughtful. "I have 2 older brothers who still run the family ranch in Colorado. I'm allergic to cats but love dogs. I can't carry a tune to save my life, and I've been half in love with you since the first day I walked into your store." The simple declaration stole her breath. "Oliver, too much?" He looked genuinely concerned. "No," she said after a moment, "not too much, just unexpected." His relief was visible. "Good, because I plan to keep surprising you, Vanessa Birch, for a very long time." As they finished their meal and Oliver escorted her home under a canopy of stars, Vanessa found herself believing that perhaps, just perhaps, he meant every word. The weeks that followed saw Oliver Thornton court Vanessa Birch with a determination and openness that gradually wore down her defenses. He brought her books from his trips to Tucson, spent evenings on the porch of her father's house discussing everything from cattle prices to poetry, and escorted her to every social event in Copper Springs. The town's initial shock at their courtship gradually gave way to acceptance, though Mabel Winston continued to sniff disapprovingly whenever they passed. Lillian, having set her sights on the banker's son from Phoenix, pretended Oliver had never been of interest at all. By midsummer, when Oliver escorted Vanessa to the Independence Day celebration, no one batted an eye when they danced every dance together, or when he kept his arm around her waist during the fireworks display. "They've accepted us," Vanessa marveled as they walked home under the lingering scent of gunpowder. "They've accepted the inevitable," Oliver corrected with a smile, "though I suspect your father's approval carries significant weight in this town." Edgar Birch had indeed become Oliver's staunch supporter, often inviting him to stay for dinner and engaging him in long conversations about the future of the territory. "He likes you," Vanessa agreed. "He says you remind him of himself when he was younger." High praise indeed. Oliver's hand found hers in the darkness. "Vanessa, there's something I need to tell you." The seriousness in his voice made her stomach tighten with apprehension. "What is it?" He guided her to a small stone wall surrounding the church garden, gesturing for her to sit. "William has made his decision official. He's offering me a full partnership in the Rocking W, with the understanding that I'll take over completely when he retires in a few years." Relief flooded her. "Oliver, that's wonderful news." "There's more." He took a deep breath. "I've bought land adjacent to the ranch, 20 acres with a view of the mountains and a year-round spring. I'm having a house built there." Vanessa's heart began to pound. "A house?" Oliver knelt before her, taking both her hands in his. "A home, Vanessa, our home, if you'll have me. I love you. I want you to be my wife." Though she'd known this moment was coming, the reality of it still left her breathless. "Oliver, are you certain, truly certain?" Instead of answering immediately, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. Opening it, he revealed a delicate gold ring set with a perfect diamond that caught the moonlight. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," he said simply. "I love you, Vanessa Birch, every part of you, your mind, your heart, your body, your soul. I want to spend my life with you. I want to build a family with you. I want to grow old watching our children and grandchildren thrive on the land we've tended together." Tears filled Vanessa's eyes. "I love you too, Oliver, so much that it frightens me sometimes." "Is that a yes?" Hope blazed in his eyes. She nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. Oliver slid the ring onto her finger, then rose to sit beside her, gathering her into his arms. His kiss was gentle at first, then increasingly passionate as she responded with all the love she'd kept guarded for so long. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Oliver rested his forehead against hers. "You've made me the happiest man in Arizona territory." "And you've proven me wrong," she whispered. "Wonderfully, beautifully wrong." Their wedding day dawned clear and bright in early October. The church in Copper Springs overflowed with well-wishers, including both of Oliver's brothers who had traveled from Colorado for the occasion. As Vanessa stood at the back of the church on her father's arm, dressed in a gown of ivory satin that had been made to her exact measurements by the finest dressmaker in Tucson, she caught sight of Oliver waiting at the altar. His face, when he turned and saw her, transformed with such joy that her last lingering doubts melted away. "Ready, Nessie?" her father asked, his own eyes suspiciously damp. "More than ready, Pa," she replied, and meant it with her whole heart. As they processed down the aisle, Vanessa was aware of the faces turned toward her, Elena Rodriguez beaming with delight, Dr. Fowler and his wife nodding approvingly, even Mabel Winston looking somewhat mollified by the grandeur of the occasion. But none of that mattered as much as the man waiting for her, his blue eyes never leaving her face. The ceremony passed in a blur of emotion. Oliver's hands held her steadily as they exchanged vows, his voice clear and sure as he promised to love, honor, and cherish her all the days of their lives. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, his kiss was both tender and possessive, a promise of the life they would build together. The celebration afterward at the Rocking W Ranch was the social event of the season, with guests from as far as Tucson and Phoenix joining the festivities. William Rocking, now fully recovered from the events of the spring, toasted the new partners in both ranch and life with genuine affection. As dusk fell and lanterns were lit around the ranch yard, Oliver led Vanessa away from the festivities toward a waiting buggy. "Where are we going?" she asked, though she suspected the answer. "Home," he said simply. "I want to show my wife her new home." The house Oliver had built stood on a gentle rise overlooking a valley where the Rocking W cattle grazed. In the twilight, its whitewashed walls and broad porch gleamed welcomingly, windows glowing with lamplight left by the housekeeper who had prepared it for their arrival. Oliver lifted Vanessa from the buggy and carried her across the threshold, setting her down gently in the entrance hall. "It's beautiful," she breathed, taking in the polished wood floors, the comfortable furnishings, the bookshelves already filled with volumes both old and new. "It's yours," Oliver said, his arms encircling her from behind. "All of it, this house, the land, my heart." Vanessa turned in his embrace, raising a hand to touch his cheek. "Our house, our land. Our heart." His smile was tender as he bent to kiss her. "Mrs. Thornton," he murmured against her lips, "my Vanessa." Later, as they lay entwined in the large bed that dominated the master bedroom, Vanessa traced lazy patterns on her husband's bare chest. "I never thought I'd have this," she confessed softly. "A husband who loves me, a home of my own, a future filled with promise instead of loneliness." Oliver captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I never thought I'd find someone who completes me the way you do. When I came to Arizona, I was looking for opportunity, for a place to build something lasting. I never expected to find the other half of my soul." She settled her head against his shoulder, content in a way she'd never imagined possible. "That day in the store when I said no man loves a fat girl. And I promised to prove you wrong," he finished. "I meant it then and I mean it now. I'll spend every day of our lives proving how much I love you, Vanessa Thornton, every single day." His kiss sealed that promise, a promise he would keep through the birth of their children, through the expansion of the Rocking W into one of the territory's most prosperous ranches, through all the joys and challenges of their life together. And on quiet evenings, as they sat on the porch of their home watching the sun set over the land they shared, Vanessa would sometimes catch her husband looking at her with the same wonder and love he'd shown on their wedding day. In those moments, she knew with absolute certainty that she'd been wonderfully, beautifully wrong, and she'd never been happier about being proven so.